All right, thank you very much. Alex and I are going to tell you exactly what we're doing over at the Recovery Board, but to give you just a small idea, the demonstrations or the examples that you were given by Frank today, our job at the board is to effectively oversee that that money is spent in the proper place so that the people that are supposed to get it, those recipients actually do. So Alex and I are going to walk through this together. I have the privilege of working with Mr. Fishman, who is a genius mathematician from Carnegie Mellon, and he will now work my slides for the...
Proud to work here.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead. So just to remind you, the Recovery Act, if you've been paying attention here, so it says $787 billion, but I hear a different version of that number every day. Let's just say roughly $800 billion in spending. And the board that was established under the Recovery Act in 2009 has two key roles, transparency and accountability. I'm here representing the accountability side of that. Next. If you can imagine, our goal is to serve the oversight community and help them prevent fraud, waste, and abuse. The federal government has inspectors general in every one of the agencies that got the money. So there are 28 agencies and 29 IGs. And our job was to help them in that mission. Think about what we do as a lead factory. We are a Center for Information Aggregation and Analysis. We do three key processes. We screen to ensure that the people that are getting your tax dollars are folks that are worthy of that and don't represent too high of a risk. We do deep investigation through link analysis that we're actually going to show you an example of. And we do predictive modeling and resource allocation. Effectively, we help inspectors general spend time on the areas where we think are the most at risk. So in the area of screening, right now, for the first time in our country's history, we actually put through all the recipients of the money. And I'm not talking about the individual entitlement recipients. I'm talking about contractors, grantees, people that are receiving your funds. And we actually go through and ensure that they are screened through different things like bankruptcies, past criminal histories. It's the same exact thing you all go through when you hire somebody to work on your home. You actually go through and check them out. Well, believe it or not, through the government systems, there's a whole lot of hurdles on the contracting side, but there's not so many on the grant and loan side. And effectively, this is what we've done is we've focused on the upfront to determine what kind of risk we're dealing with, okay? Once we get past that risk screening, we go to the next step, which is our deep risk analysis. And this is the portion where I'm going to have Alex walk us through. But effectively, we use information from a myriad of open sources, and we pull information together to give you a better picture of who we're dealing with. I want to emphasize this. The thing that got us here was our ability to pull together the private and public sectors to work together in an analytics center that hasn't existed before. What we look for in this sort of demonstration I'm going to show you is non-obvious linkages or relationships between people that are getting your money and people that shouldn't be getting your money. One example I've given in public forums before is if you look at the debarment list in federal government, if you're debarred from federal service, if you're not supposed to receive money because of something you did wrong, well, it's as easy as opening up another company, having someone else step in as the corporate officer, changing your DUNS number, and you're back in business. So this analytic platform that we're going to show you is our ability to reach in and figure out exactly who we're doing business with. So, Alex?
So I'm going to show you today the Palantir platform performing this analysis on purely notional data. All of the names and places have been changed. So this investigation begins, like many of the investigations at the Recovery Board, with a tip that came in. This tip came in from Sam Hall and is alleging that a couple of individuals at a military installation are perpetrating contract fraud. I can see that we've extracted a lot of the relevant entities, and this particular complaint references JMC LLC. So I'm just going to add these onto the graph right now. And now you can see the complaint that we've received linked to these individuals, which I'll put over here. And you can see that they allege that JMC, which is this company here, has perpetrated contract fraud. Now, the first thing that we need to establish at this point is, did this company, JMC LLC, receive recovery money? Because if they didn't, we can finish our analysis. So I've constructed a filter right here, and I can see that, sure enough, JMC has received recovery dollars. And I can see the individual contracts here. So again, these are anonymized, but I can see all of the data immediately integrated. that's relevant to me, like how much money they received and what they did, what work they did in order to receive it. And I can just put these on the map and can actually see that this group of spending actually did occur on an Air Force base. Hopefully you can recognize that as an Air Force base. And then I can also trace through who's receiving the money and who's sending the money. So I can see that in this case, the money came from 2 contracting offices. These 2 contracting offices are part, again, just in this notional example, of the Department of Defense. And I can see that it went to a subsidiary of JMC. So now that I've established that JMC has indeed received recovery money, I'd like to now look at the other data that I have available to see, all right, well, is this fraudulent or not? Sorry, does this appear?
Oh, does it appear to have the propensity for high risk that might indicate fraud?
Yes. Does it have the propensity for high risk that is indicative of apparent fraud? Yes. So looking at JMC, I can see that it's actually part of a parent company, JMC Incorporated. And looking at JMC Incorporated, I can see that it has another subsidiary, Jones Management Consortium. In fact, JMC probably stands for Jones Management Consortium. The shocking thing about Jones Management Consortium is that it has been excluded, which means that Jones Management Consortium has been indicted for the adequate evidence of the commission of fraud or antitrust violations. So what we've uncovered here is what we would call a non-obvious relationship. That is to say, this company, JMC, that's receiving recovery money, is very closely related to Jones Management Consortium, which has been debarred in the past. Identifying things like this, places where entities that are receiving money are clearly connected to known fraudsters, is very important. And now that we've established this, we might like to look at the individuals behind JMC to see if they also have been associated with fraud in the past. Using the Central Contracting Repository, the CCR, we can see that Scott Alvarez is in charge of JMC LLC. He's the boss. And he also has been debarred for the indictment or evidence of fraud or antitrust violations. What was relevant for us to look at here was open source information like newspaper articles. Now you can see, this is again an anonymized newspaper article from Dayton, which is where the anonymized military installation was, that talks about Scott Alvarez, Melissa Alvarez, Eric Alvarez, and Mary Jones. So they've actually all been debarred, and this talks a little bit about how he and his sister are all related. I can now use this information in the investigation. I can see I've added them all here. Let me bring them up. And this is obviously relevant to how I would like to continue this case. Oops. Flip them around. So now that I have these 3 individuals, I'd like to know, well, all right, do they have any companies? And if they do have any companies, have those companies been debarred in the past? And I can actually search that again using the CCR. And I can see that, in fact, they do have companies. Alvarez Construction, Alvarez Engineering, and Desert Development Corp. And Alvarez Consulting has also been debarred. So now I've colored the entities. So we can see what we have here is JMC LLC, which is receiving recovery money, is related to a very large number of entities that have been known to perpetrate fraud in the past. We're able to do this by stitching together a very large number of data sets. In this case, the tip lines, the spending data, which we get from either USA Spending, FPDS, FADS, or recovery.gov, along with relationship information about the companies and open source information about the people. One last thing that we noticed is when we put all of these entities on the map, we see down here Alvarez Engineering and JMC are very close to one another. Zooming in, we can see here's JMC, the company that received recovery money, which is a whole 47 meters away from Alvarez Engineering, a company known by the government to have perpetrated fraud in the past.
So thank you. So what we would do with that, just in case you're wondering, is really sort of part of the last service that we provide. We would actually then take those cases, if you will, build them out so it's a more clear indicator and more clear analysis of who we're doing business with and why we think it's an at-risk situation. And then we would forward that to the various inspectors general or any other agency that has a law enforcement or oversight mission to watch these funds. Okay? So again, one of the last things we do is we help in the area of risk management, and we're in a great position now to help them focus resources where they've never had before. And am I going to show them the maps there?
Yeah, there's the next slides.
Hit the next one. The last things we do that I've alluded to is that we take areas that were high risk before. Now look, this map is for demonstration purpose only. Don't read anything into that, all right? So we take areas where there was high risk situations before, where people were losing their jobs, where people were having a hard economic time during the recession, before the Recovery Act was passed. Our thought was those are areas that might be, or folks might be victimized by scams and so forth. Then we overlaid it with where the recovery money is going, and then we overlaid that with the high risk programs that the IGs told us about. And lastly, we took where we're getting the most hotline calls about. So effectively, there is a systematic methodology to where we're spending our time and where we're focusing our resources. And that's what that map represents. And we push that out to the individual inspectors general, either in a format like that, or the next one, I think we isolate by county, where we can actually concentrate and put our resources. So again, a systematic methodology of focusing what is a very limited resource in the area of personnel. So finally, I'll leave you with this before I get played off the stage here. The core functions of what we're doing in the board and what we hope to promulgate to other agencies. I think you've probably seen where the Vice President announced where we're doing a pilot with Medicare, where we're trying to help out as much as we can in their analysis efforts. But we take input from various places. We're exploiting open source information as best we can. We do as much as we can in the area of screening, and then we forward that on to our analytic team that Alex just demonstrated to figure out who are we actually doing business with. The areas that represent the highest risk, or the cases, I should say, those get forwarded on to the inspectors general. And then lastly, we push that out in the form of a lead to those individual agencies, and then we support it through the life cycle of the case. And or we do risk mapping, like I just showed you, where we can help you identify areas of risk before they happen in the first place. Okay? And I think that concludes what I'm going to talk about, except that we're supposed to go away in 2013, and I'm hoping that some of the ideas that we have come up with can help agencies in the future. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks a lot.